Welcome to Zoom with Czarny. I'm Dustin Czarny, Democratic Elections Commissioner for Onondaga County, and welcome to my interview show where I interview democracy advocates and Democratic lawmakers and candidates from Onondaga County and throughout New York. I'm very happy for you to be here for my conversation with Karen Wharton of Citizen Action. Karen is a great democracy advocate, and her and two others and I have been on a panel for budget testimony each of the last few years. And we've gotten to know each other quite well through that. And this is my second time having her on the program. She's an excellent advocate for the public campaign finance program that is starting this year. So I'm happy to have her on. But before we get to the interview, just a few updates on what's going on at the Board of Elections. We're about to certify the presidential primary from April 2nd. We're going to be doing that on Monday. We have up on the website right now at onvote.net all of the latest vote totals. They include all the votes that were totaled over the last couple of days, with all the absentees that returned after the last cutoff, and so they were scanned on Tuesday and Wednesday, and as well as affidavit ballots that were turned in on election day and during early voting. So the vote totals are up. Not budget change. President Biden and former President Trump were the winners of their two respective parties. We'll be certifying that on Monday, and it will be done with the presidential primary and on to the June primary. Speaking of that, a little bit of news since my commissioner in the car on last Tuesday. There were a couple of races that I missed that are looking like they might be primaries. There's a Republican primary for town council out in Lysander, and there's a Republican and Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. But my caveat on those petitions are both being challenged. There are nominated candidates from both parties. So of course, Karen Gillibrand, the incumbent senator, is on the Democratic side. But the challengers that have filed petitions, a lot of times these statewide petitions are challenged and are thrown off. So we're going to wait and see what happens with these challenges that were filed. We'll see if specifics turn up. I believe they'll be due on Monday. And if that's the case, then we will have, we'll get a good look and see whether the state board is going to throw those challenges off or keep them on the ballot. So we'll know kind of that by May 1st. But right now in Onondaga County, Democratic primaries in New York 22, the congressional race, Democratic primaries in SD 50 for U.S. Senate or New York Senate. That's the seat currently held by John Mannion, though he's running for Congress now, so it's an open seat. And then a Republican primary in U.S. or New York Senate District 48, held by Rachel May. Lysander Town Republicans for town board are having a primary, and also it looks like several primaries scattered throughout several different towns on the Republican and Conservative committee members. We'll know more about that by the end of this week. So look for an update on that on Tuesday of next week. And we're still awaiting news on the budget. We hope that the budget will be passed. I think the latest extender is till Monday the 15th. So it's quite possible on Tuesday the 16th, when I get home from Albany, because I'll be traveling to Albany that day, we'll have a budget and we'll know a little bit more about what that means for elections in New York this year. So that's it. Please stay tuned for my interview with Karen Wharton of Citizen Action on the New York campaign public finance system that is going into place this year. Bye-bye. And we're back, and I'm so happy to have my good friend Karen Wharton of Citizen Action New York. Karen and I go back. We've been on the same panel testifying in the New York State budget hearings. We did this last February, and we've done it the last few years together. And she's been on the program before, but I think she's a wealth of knowledge, so I'm happy to have her on. Karen, thanks for coming on Zoom with Czarny.
Thank you so much, Dustin, for having me here. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. I feel like we made a pretty good tag team, uh, along with Erica and some others during budget hearings. So I'm looking forward to having, a one-on-one with you and your listeners. So
Yeah,
thanks
no,
for having
I Erica Smika of League of Women Voters, Joanna's Denise, Brennan Center, they've all been on the pod this year too, and now you're on, and so it kind of completes the circle of our little budget group that it seems to always testify together. But Karen, I know you've been on before, but can you remind voters of who you are and what citizen action is?
Sure. So I'm Karen Wharton, and I am the Democracy Coalition Coordinator at Citizen Action. And what that means is that I represent citizen action in coalitions around democracy. And I facilitate the Fair Elections Coalition, which is our primary focus there is money in politics, taking money out of politics and giving New Yorkers a fairer, more equitable democracy. Citizen Action is a grassroots statewide organization, and we fight for equity across multiple issues, of course, democracy, but as well as housing, criminal justice, healthcare, climate, education. And again, we're a member driven grassroots organization, and we empower people, we empower our communities, uplift communities, and we try to give voice to folks who may not otherwise have a voice.
So I always like having these good democracy groups on. Eventually I'm going to transition to candidates, but we're still kind of figuring out who the candidates are. But that kind of brings me to what I think is I really want to first talk to you about, because you've been so active on it, is the public campaign finance system. Right now as we talk, it's the petitions are starting to be finalized. We're starting to know who the candidates are, but we've actually kind of gotten a little hint of who the candidates are because they've signed up for the public campaign finance system, which is new this year, which is a small donor matching system. Why don't you talk a little bit about what it is in New York and how it works?
Sure, thank you. When we look at the way business is conducted in New York right now, people, wealthy folks, corporations, and so on, have an outsized voice in our democracy in the way our government is run. The Brennan Center did a study of after the 2022 elections and found that 200 of New York's wealthiest people, citizens, donated approximately $16 million to statewide candidates. And at the same time, same election, a little over 206,000 New Yorkers who can only afford to donate $250 or less. Together, they contributed $13 million. So you have 200 folks, 16 million, 206, 13 million. And so if you look at campaign donations as a form of speech, then 200 people have an outsized voice than the 206. And so how that plays out in our democracy is that we have at the state government, lobbyists, wealthy folks, they are on speed dial with our electeds. And so we end up seeing programs that are more favorable to a certain demographic, which is not the everyday New Yorkers. So it's entirely legal. So what do we do to ensure that everyday New Yorkers, such as myself and perhaps Dustin, I'm taking certain liberties here, how do we have some equity? How do we have a voice in our elections or the way our government functions? And that is what public campaign financing does. It matches using public dollars. It matches our small donation, give it a multiplying effect. So if you donate $50, for instance, it's equivalent to $650 to your candidate of choice. if as long as your candidate is in district, meaning lives in your neighborhood, and signed up for the public campaign financing. So public campaign financing, the matching funds program, is basically a way to ensure that we all have access to our electeds and to our government, and we have a say in our government.
So New York, this is its first year of doing this. The other states have done this. I think a lot of people point to those other states as a success, but you're going to have your detractors that are talking about, like, spending taxpayer dollars on politics. That was what the detractor said when we were passing this, last year. What have we seen in New York this year? What kind of candidates are filing to be part of this public campaign finance system?
So we're we finding that the candidates who are filing are very diverse. There are Democrats, there are Republicans, they're upstate, they're downstate, they're male, female, they are incumbents as well as challengers. And we've had there are over 300 candidates running for state senate and state assembly have signed up so far. And we're finding that we're candidates who would have ordinarily been left out of the process because of money, because they don't have access to wealth and can't raise enough money because they don't know people who have money to stand up a campaign, a viable campaign, are now able to do so with matching funds. So we have the single mother who 2 years ago wanted to run for assembly, but didn't have the financial wherewithal, is now able to do so. So I think that we're finding that there's more diversity in the candidates who are running this year.
And so, we see this more diversity, and they're able to, be a part of it. But as I said, this is petition week, right? And so there are going to be inevitably candidates who signed up for the public campaign finance that may not survive getting on the ballot. What kind of safeguards are in place for that? Are candidates who aren't on the ballot going to be able to get this money? Is there a qualifier here that they actually have to be a candidate? And I know we have an independent nominating petition later on, in mid-May or mid-April, late May too. So there's another qualifying round. But what if a candidate doesn't get on the ballot at all? Are they still allowed to get matching funds?
No. So we're using public dollars. So your and my dollars, or taxpaying dollars. So we have to be judicious in how we give out the money, so to speak, to candidates who are viable. We're not going to give public dollars to candidates who are not viable. So we've set up a number of different criteria to qualify for public dollars. First is that you have to sign up for the program. It's a voluntary program, so you sign up. Secondly, you have to meet a certain financial threshold. So you have to demonstrate that you do have some support from your community. And then 3, you have to make the ballot. You make the ballot, you make the threshold, you sign up for the program, and you're in a competitive race. Then you'll begin to have taxpayers' money. And this is not to be a pain in the neck, but we do have to protect our dollars. And this is the way it's designed, so that only candidates who are viable will be able to receive public funds.
You said competitive race, so that kind of brings up, unfortunately, in New York, in every case, there's going to be a host of races that are uncontested, where there is no challenger at all. So those people would also not qualify for the public campaign finance?
It depends. So there is a primary election and general election. So you can be uncontested in the primary, but be contested in the general election. So if you're running, and let's say you're running as a Republican, and the Republican primary is uncontested, so you're a shoo-in. But the other side, they're duking it out. Presumably, you as a Republican will meet a Democrat or someone, one of the others who are duking it out in the general election. And so at that point, you'll be able to get a reduced amount in your primary. This way you can get your name out and you wouldn't be at a disadvantage in the general election. And it goes both ways, right? Whether you're Republican, Democrat, right? Because it's a nonpartisan program. The thing is, if you don't have a competitor, what are you spending your money on? So if you don't have a competitor, neither in the primary nor in the general election, you will not qualify for public funds because there is no race.
That's good. I'm glad that we have those, safeguards in place because, in the infancy of this program, you don't want to see, people just using it as kind of a slush fund. This is only for races that matter to New Yorkers. And we should say which offices can be part of this because I don't think we said that yet. So it's not the local offices; it's just the state offices, right?
Yeah. So in the 2024, this year, it's state legislative office, so state senate and state assembly. And then in 2026, it'll be statewide. So governor, lieutenant governor, state comptroller, and attorney general. But for now, this election cycle, it's just a legislative race.
Right. So that's good. So we have all these people qualifying. They're gonna, we're gonna really see in a couple weeks after the challenges are done who's got races, and then of course we may have additional races that come up in late May when the independent nominating petitions are come in. So there may be eventual challengers that are also there. So that's good. What you know so what other, what haven't I missed or what have I missed with this public campaign finance? Is there anything else before we go on to other topics? Is there anything else that you want, the viewers to know? How is it too late to sign up for this?
It's too late. The deadline for candidates to sign up has passed. It was in February. The candidates who have signed up are currently fundraising. And the one thing I have to say, Dustin, is that I found anecdotally, the fundraisers seem far more interested and inclusive and inviting this time around than in previous years. So you're having, I'm seeing fundraisers with significantly lower price tags, right? Entry fee. So $25 fundraisers. And candidates are even asking for $5 the minimum. So we're seeing candidates are running or hosting karaoke parties in district. I saw one by a Republican celebrating St. Patty's Day with bagpipes and so on, $25 entry point. And this is a good thing. It's a good thing because it invites everyday New Yorkers to participate. Not many of us can afford to pay $500 for a dinner. And so when you go to the fundraiser, the $25 fundraiser, the candidate is usually there. And you could get a look-see. You can go up, you could talk to them, and you could say, yo, I'm glad you're running. And I want you to know that these are the pressure points in my neighborhood, and if you win or when you win, I want you to do X, Y, Z. In the old days, when they're charging $1,200, and some of them are still charging $1,200 and $1,500 a plate. Most of us probably can't even get past the gates. So we have no chance of interacting with the candidates. So a major outcome of having this type of matching fund public campaign finance program is that it brings candidates and constituents closer together. And I don't know about you, but when I give a candidate $5, $10, I feel like, they need to answer my call. I feel like I know them. We have a relationship now, and I'm not reticent at all to call and let them know what's happening on my block, what I need from them, and also to give suggestions. So it's not, I mean, it's a bi-directional relationship. So I think this is what we've seen in other states that have public campaign financing. And I expect that this is going to be one of the positive outcomes here in New York, where it'll bring candidates and constituents, electeds and the people they serve a lot closer. We may find that electeds or candidates are going to forego like the big, like all the lobbyists donations because they can raise from in district, and then they're no longer going to be so beholden to lobbyists and corporations, and they're going to be listening to their constituents more.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Like, that's kind of the goal, right? Is a more inclusive, more reactive government to our citizens. And, and that's part of the goal of increasing voter turnout is part of that goal, because you have more people voting, you have more people choosing a government that looks like the populace, but also then is responsive to the populace. And the same thing with, campaign finance, by kind of leveling the playing field. It's not just votes how you get elected, unfortunately, it's money too. And by leveling the playing field and having more citizens be involved in fundraising because of the small dollar matching and making their voice amplified, it allows people to maybe, it will never like outraise corporations, but it gets us on the same playing field, and at least our interests can be heard, not just at the ballot box, but at the fundraisers as well.
Exactly, exactly. And it gives candidates a chance, the opportunity to spend more time in district, because right now the majority of fundraising is done in a couple of zip codes, and most of us don't live in those zip codes. So if the person who is running to represent you is spending time in Westchester, the ritzy part of Westchester, it means they're not knocking doors in your district. You don't have an opportunity to see them. They're away. And many candidates don't really want to do that. They would prefer to stay in district. So we're giving candidates who want to stay in district, who want to spend time with their constituents, an opportunity to do so.
So citizen action isn't only involved in public campaign finance. You are a diverse group yourself, and you're a democracy advocate, and you're doing other things as well to get prepared for both the June primary and the November election. What are some of the other things that citizen action is involved in?
Do you mean election-wise or just across the board?
Whatever you'd like to talk about, sure, but let's go election-wise.
So, okay, I'll go across the board and then come back to democracy election.
All right, sounds good.
So Citizen Action is currently involved in the fight for more affordable housing. My colleagues are, in Albany almost every day working on that issue. How we are in the midst of a huge housing crisis. Affordable housing crisis is even worse. And Citizen has put a lot of chips behind that. We're also working to end medical debt. There's no reason why if you unfortunately come down with a debilitating illness that incurs a lot of expenses, that you should lose your home because of, or have to go bankrupt because of medical debt. So we're working on that. Climate change, education, strengthening public education. We're working on criminal justice as well as some others. I'm sure tomorrow I'm going to hear, "Hey, Karen, you didn't mention my issue." But I am working on democracy, on expanding and protecting democracy. And as you mentioned, this is a critical year for us nationwide. And what Citizen Action is doing, what I'm involved in, is I am working to set up a day or a few days where we will be across the state, encouraging people to vote in a nonpartisan way, both for the primary in June, as well as for the general election. So we want to make sure that people turn out and vote their conscience. You know, a lot of effort is being put into suppressing our votes, and there's a reason for that. So I will encourage everyone who's listening to make sure they vote. I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but you do need to go out and make sure your voice is counted, because you better believe it, there are other people who are going to go and make sure their voices are counted. And you don't want your neighbor, right, to be making decisions for you. You want to, well, let me use the I word. I don't want my neighbors, I love them and all, but I don't want them to make decisions for me. I feel like I can make decisions for myself, and the way we make decisions civically is by voting. So that's what I'm going to be doing personally, and professionally we'll be organizing, phone banking, text banking, to get people to vote.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important year. I know we're, and I'm the foremost advocate to say you can't just vote in the presidential year. You have to vote every year. But we are in a presidential year. And if we can make some people vote this year, it might form a habit that they'll vote next year and the year after that and every year. And that's why this year is so important. It's so important to get registered to vote. It's so important to go out and voice if you're in a party, if you have a primary in June, and then of course in November. And while some people say, "Oh, well, the presidency is decided in New York, it's gonna go blue," and probably will. We saw in 2022 how important New York votes are when it comes to the congressional race. It was New York congressional races that may have given the House to the Republicans. And that's not you got to vote Democrat, you got to vote Republican. It's just talking about the value of your vote and being out there. New York is a battleground, on the congressional level, and it's important to get out there and express your desires, so you can have people who represent you.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. So we have the three levels of government, and they do somewhat different, very different things. So we have the federal, so we're going to vote president, and of course we'll vote congressional. And then we have state races, and then there are local races, probably some local races here and there. But we definitely have the state senate and state assembly races, as well as the presidential and congressional races. Now, when I talk to people and they say, "Oh, I don't vote," I only vote president every 4 years. I'm like, okay, if there's a pothole on your block, on your street,
Right.
do you think that President Biden, or if you prefer President Trump, do you think that they're the ones who is going to make sure that that's filled? No. The people who are responsible, who are closest to you, is your local government. And if you are not voting in your local government, if you're not participating, you're basically not getting involved in whether you're going to have a park in your neighborhood and and how the park is going to be kept. You're not participating in the decision. And even in terms of sanitation, I'm downstate in New York City, in Brooklyn, and the schedule sanitation is determined somehow, somewhere or the other by City Hall, the City Council. So if I'm abstaining from City Council races, then when my garbage doesn't get picked up every day, like some other districts, it's on me. So I tell folks, you need to show up every single race because every one of them will have a slightly different purpose. Wherever you live in, Utica, Albany, wherever in New York State, the money is coming from the state legislature. If you're not sending the person who is going to represent you, you have only yourself to blame.
That's right.
When you don't have the resources you need. So folks have to vote up and down the ticket every time.
Well, Karen, we're kind of getting near the end of this podcast. I can talk to you for hours. I'm not sure anybody will listen to us for hours, but I like to end the podcast on my catch-all question. What haven't we talked about? What is there an issue or an item, or you want to talk about your dog, whatever you'd like? What haven't we talked about that you want to leave the audience with?
I'm glad you asked. There's some other things, in addition to public campaign finance, and I'm working on some other things that I think are fairly interesting. And one of them is we're working, it's called Jury of Our Peers. It's a piece of legislation where we are working to ensure that folks who are currently incarcerated and have traditionally lost their right to serve on juries because they've been convicted of a felony offense. Once they've been released, we are working to ensure that the right to serve on juries will be reinstated. And you may say, well, what does that have to do with democracy? Because it's not necessarily showing up on election day and filling out the ballot. But it is how our judicial system runs. And if you are ever so unfortunate to have to face a jury, you want to have a jury of your peers. And this bill will help ensure that. So I'm excited to work on that, as well as the even year election, having our elections and even years and so on. So there's a lot of stuff that we're working on, Dustin, that I'm excited about. Of course, none more so than public campaign finance. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come spend this time with you to talk about our favorite subject where we go, or mine anyway, when we testify.
Yeah, I would love to talk more about the even year legislation, but because I'm a named party in the lawsuit, I'm kind of like, I'm going to let the lawsuit speak for itself there. And once that is resolved, I'm going to have a lot to say about that lawsuit and also the even year. Although many people can go see my public statements on the even year, of course, I support that legislation, and I support it going further with a constitutional amendment to bring in the cities as well. But that being said, Karen, thank you so much for coming on Zoom with Czarny. I'm going to put Citizen Action's Facebook and website and Twitter links in in the show notes. So please go follow them because there's a lot of great stuff that they're doing. But again, Karen, thank you for coming on Zoom with Czarny.
Pleasure is all mine.
And that was my interview with Karen Wharton of Citizen Action. Please, she's a great advocate. Go follow her on all the socials that will be in the show notes. She and Citizen Action are doing great work in New York. So please stay tuned and listen to what they have to say. This weekend, weekly walk. I'll be doing back on the weekend schedules with a weekly walk because it just worked better for me. But I'll be doing my first look back at the presidential primary, early voting and absentee voting, and affidavit ballot voting. All of that right on the weekly walk this next week. Commissioner Carr will be Tuesday. It'll be late on Tuesday because I'll be coming back from Albany pretty late. Maybe I'll do a commissioner on the train. I've tried to do that a couple of times and it hasn't always worked out, but I'll be traveling to Albany on Tuesday to continue my advocacy for money and resources and election law changes. But I will be back and I will at least do a commissioner car late that night. Zoom with Czarny next week. Moving into my yearly conversations with the top elected officials in Onondaga County. This year, Marty Mastapole is up first. And we'll be talking next week about his fifth year, starting fifth year in the job as Onondaga County Comptroller, one of the highest ranked Democrats in Onondaga County, and the top vote getter in this last election. So check it all out at dustinczarny.com. You can like and subscribe and get email notifications anytime I post an update, whether it's content or election news. And I maintain that website for free because I am I believe that this is part of my public outreach as Democratic Elections Commissioner, but also I will never take ads. I'll never charge money. You can go right there and get all the information that you'd like. All right. Thank you very much and enjoy your day. Bye-bye.